Welcome to The Other Side, Mississippi Today's political podcast. I'm Geoff Pender with Mississippi Today, joined here today by someone we've had on before, but it's been a while, the one and only, almost needs no introduction, Anna Wolfe, Pulitzer Prize winning journalist for Mississippi Today. Anna, great to have you back on our show.
Thanks for having me.
Sure.
And we've also got Maya Miller, who is our new Jackson reporter. Came to us from MPB, and she's really hit the ground running. So I'm excited to have her in discussion today.
Right. This is going to be a great show, and glad to have both of y'all on.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Okay, and then we have a special guest today, someone else who has been on the show before, no stranger to it. We have Representative Zakiya Summers. Representative, welcome. Thank you for coming back on the show.
Well, thank you all so much for having me. And Geoff, you are the luckiest man in the room because you are surrounded by three very intelligent women. So congratulations.
You're right. I should just duck off camera here. Might be best for everyone. Anyway, Representative, you represent District 68, which includes Hinds and Rankin counties. I believe you served in the legislature since 2020, correct?
That's right.
Lots to probably cover, probably more than we can cover in one podcast today. But do you want to start out with anything legislative-wise that you're really looking at right now, or want to run through with us at the outset?
Sure. So thank you all again so much for having me. As you said, I've been in the legislature now for 6 years, so this is my sixth session. Very honored and very humbled to have this position that my folks within District 68 decided to put me back in 2023. And I always tell folks that I have the best district in the state. I have somewhat of a, polarized district, I guess you could say, because I have West Jackson and Hinds County, and I have Pearl, Richland, and Flowood and Rankin County. Hinds County, West Jackson part being primarily African-American voters, low to middle income voters. And then on the Rankin County side, a lot of business, a lot of commerce, middle to high income, primarily white voters. And so, I have an opportunity to really bring folks together and try to put some things forward that help the district as a whole. Of course, I live in West Jackson, and I'm doing as much as I can to help this community. We have some outstanding assets in our district, like Jackson State University. Shout out to the Tigers, the national champs. We'll be bringing them to the Capitol in a few days. We also have, folks like the Bean Path that's doing some great things in terms of creating a tech village in downtown Jackson, Labaki, Refill Jackson initiative that, I am proud to be a board member of. And so, the legislation that we're focused on as it relates to the city of Jackson is really how we can continue to support those assets and making sure that we're providing resources to folks that are within those communities.
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to ask, generally what the biggest issues are for Jackson during this session.
So the Speaker of the House created a select committee during the summer called the Capital Revitalization Committee. And, I don't want to take credit for the committee, but I will say that, last session and this session, I introduced some legislation to create a downtown revitalization task force. And because a portion of my district is within downtown Jackson, and I know that if we are to begin to create economic development opportunities, it's got to start in downtown and spread out, which would, assist communities in the West Jackson area and even over on the Highway 80 side, on the Pearl side. And so I spoke with the chairman of the State Affairs Committee where this legislation went to and talked to him about why it was important that, we try to create collaboration and really see the state and the city as partners as we support and help our capital city, because we always hear that, this is our capital city. And so, I don't know that if this committee, the Speakers Committee, was a result of that, but I would say that maybe it is, one iteration of that. And so during the summer, the committee, which was led by my colleagues, Representative Mansell and Yates, had several hearings on various issues from water, sewer to blight to homelessness, even about the potential of bringing a casino to the city of Jackson. And so I think we've seen a lot of legislation that have resulted from those hearings, a couple of bills that we actually passed just this week that came from that committee. And so I do think that there is an effort to try to figure out what are the best solutions to some of the top concerns that folks are talking about. In my district, just recently, actually, we held a town hall meeting and we talked with residents about issues that they're dealing with as it relates to their property value, their property being devalued because of the level of blight that's within West Jackson, because of high crime, because of the unhoused population. And so those are the things that they really want us to tackle. And I think that, we're doing that in a number of ways. From my perspective as state rep for 68, I've introduced a couple of pieces of legislation that relate specifically to the unhoused. One of them is House Bill 717, which would allow the Department of the Commissioner of Public Safety to create a process by where homeless individuals can have access to an ID, because we know that, they need an ID in order to get a job, in order to access any services or resources. And so we really see this as a low-hanging fruit that would help them become more productive citizens. And then I also have a bill called, or it's labeled House Bill 1346. And this bill is actually a result of some work that I've been doing as a Milbank Memorial Fund fellow. And what we've learned is that when we're talking about the unhoused population, while it is a local issue, it requires a more comprehensive response. And so my bill would actually create an interagency task force of state agencies that deal with or have some type of role as it relates to helping the unhoused. But it would also create a community advisory board that will be made up of individuals who have this lived experience, who have expertise in how we support our unhoused and making sure that we get them the things that they need. And together, they would bring forth a report of recommendations on what we can do to begin to tackle this issue. The unhoused situation is not a Jackson only issue. What we hear from law enforcement and from locally elected officials alike is that this is really a regional issue. We're seeing surrounding communities, even communities outside the state, bringing individuals into the city of Jackson because they think that this is where they can seek the services. And the services are, targeted in a very small area right on the outskirts of downtown Jackson, which happens to be in my district. And so if that is the case, and if this is something that the state is really concerned about, then it really needs to be a state sponsored solution to helping our capital city.
There are a few other bills that tackle the idea of public camping and public sleeping, as well as soliciting, requiring a permit to essentially panhandle. And so, that comes from the Supreme Court's decision that says that cities can essentially ban public sleeping. Do you have any thoughts about those?
Well, we haven't taken up the camping bill yet. We did take up the solicitation bill, and I'm very happy to report that the House saw that this was a piece of legislation that needed to be tabled, because when you're talking about an issue that is hyper focused locally and try to make it a statewide piece of legislation that's going to impact municipalities all across the state, then you're not quite taking into consideration how that could impact some of our other areas. And so, before I came into the legislature, I served as the Director of Communications and Advocacy for the ACLU of Mississippi. And we actually worked with the National Homelessness Law Center to bring suit against cities who wanted to charge individuals for wanting to, candidly ask for money on the corner, which is their constitutional right to be able to do. And so I think there was some constitutional issues within that legislation. And I also think that it was the way that it was written, it would have been really impossible to enforce and to police, because the legislation said that individuals, and we're talking about any individual, right? One of my colleagues said, well, if my child is, selling lemonade at their lemonade stand on the corner, do they need a permit? So, and the answer to that question was yes, they would. If they were on an open roadway, they would need a permit. And so the legislation would require people to go to the police departments to pay $25 for a permit. And the likelihood of people going to a police department to pay for something like that is probably very low. So while I do appreciate my colleague's effort in trying to tackle this issue, because she was really trying to frame it around, we want to keep people safe, and I understand that. I think there's just some more work that needs to be done on that. And then as it relates to the camping legislation, the one true solution to helping homeless individuals is first getting them a roof. And so we have so many tax forfeited properties across the city and across the state. And I think that if we, heard from the experts, we heard from people who are in these situations, we talked with our agencies, as my bill would do, then we could come up with a solution that says, well, if we remove them, first of all, where are they going to go? We certainly don't want to criminalize them. If we remove them and send them on their way, then we're essentially just moving one situation from one area of town to the next. So we're not actually getting to the root of the issue. But if we could take a look at how we could perhaps, turn some of these tax forfeited properties into houses that, help our veterans, that help our families, that help individuals that may have some mental health challenges, that help individuals ensure that they have the resources and the wherewithal to get a job and really become productive again. I think that's the way that we should move. And it's possible. I mean, there are models in cities and states all across this country that really give us the playbook to be able to do that. It's not something that we have to reinvent, but we can't just have this mindset of, tyranny of small decisions where we're just going to say, well, you can't stay here, you got to stay somewhere else. And it's just a problem that continues to be recycled over and over again.
Like you mentioned, you've got to tackle this issue. You got to integrate a lot of stuff, right? You mentioned mental health. Is that not one service that's kind of at the heart of this, something that's going to have to be integrated into any solution there?
I do. And I don't want to, paint a broad stroke over the unhoused community and saying that, they all are dealing with mental health challenges, but we do know that that is a part of the equation. And, this really speaks to the need to ensure that we are providing the type of appropriations that the Department of Mental Health needs and community mental health centers need in order to service these individuals so that they aren't walking our streets and committing certain behaviors that we don't want to see in our communities. And if I could just transition the conversation, it kind of brings me to this income tax elimination bill. You had, I'm a big fan of the podcast. And again, I really appreciate you all for having me. But a few weeks ago, you had Senator Dean Kirby, who's the Senate Pro Tem, on the podcast. And he talked about how, of course, he's been in position for quite some time. He's a senior gentleman. And he talked about how a few years ago, when we did something similar, we saw, really broad cuts to some tremendous programs, and that we really needed to be careful and cautious about how we move ahead. We've seen deficits with the Department of Mental Health, which I think contributes to why we are seeing an increase in homelessness in our communities. And so I am of the position that, I voted no against the income tax elimination bill. And the reason being is because I'm very concerned about the future forecast of our state. I don't want us to see major cuts to some of these essential programs and services that we have. We've done a tremendous job, thanks to the speaker and his leadership, in creating a new school funding formula. We just did that last session, so we haven't seen that fully realized. But I think we're making some progress in those types of things like public education. And I would hate to see our work be put in vain because we're such in a rush to meet a specific policy agenda that may end up being harmful in the long run.
Well, you mentioned something that I'm sure is going to occupy a lot of your time and effort, already started, but coming up here soon. Allocation of resources. Mississippi Today over the summer, I think, had some articles that, among other things, showed disparity in the very political nature of how the state spends a lot of money, hundreds of millions of dollars. And it's the money that's supposed to go to help cities in large part on capital projects and infrastructure. There appears to be a very unfair way that's done, a very political way that's done. And just over the years, I think we've all seen Jackson often gets short shrift on that. What are we looking at this year? Is there any change? Is the leadership open to looking to change that, to looking to be more equitable in how it funds City of Jackson compared to other areas?
I think that's a $38 million question.
Right.
I wish I had a mirror ball to tell you that I knew the answer. I don't. I can only speak to my experience and what I've seen, and I can speak to what we hope and pray and what we work towards. When our speaker came into position, some of the things that he really talked about and touted was the spirit of collaboration and really working across the aisle and bringing people together, building consensus, and making sure that we are considering the best ideas together that we can put forth. And, that has not yet been fully realized, at least from my vantage point. We continue to see a very partisan nature in the legislature. And, let's be clear. We understand that we're in a supermajority. They have the numbers to do what they need to do. They don't necessarily need members from my party to pass bills or to stop bills. But I don't think that that's the way that Mississippians want us to work. I think they do want us to be equitable and fair and just in allocating, taxpayer dollars to the communities that need it the most. The city of Jackson, as they say, our capital city, is the heartbeat of the state. And I would think that leadership and my colleagues would take an approach of how can we work together to be more helpful and making sure that we get resources to the city of Jackson. So, of course, the city as well as the county, they have a litany of items that they would like to see funded. We're primarily focusing on infrastructure, particularly as it relates to blight elimination. We are focused on police and law enforcement and giving them the resources that they need to keep our community safe. We're also focused on economic development needs, because if we can provide the economic development, we can provide jobs for people. They can begin to contribute to our tax revenue, and then we will have the money to be able to do the maintenance and things that we need. But I would also, just kind of be hesitant to say that we don't need more legislation that, would adversely impact the city of Jackson or that would be considered punitive. We know that we have elections this year. There's an opportunity to elect new individuals into the mayor's seat, into the city council seat. And so, we should, I think, set those individuals up in a way to where they do have the appropriate resources to be able to tackle some of the issues that, my colleagues and folks across the city continue to elevate and say that needs some attention.
You have a few bills for, specific appropriations: Boys and Girls Club, Battlefield Park, a bond for removing and demoing blighted property. Can you talk a little bit about the specific needs in Jackson and, why that money is so needed?
Absolutely. So, the city of Jackson has gone through a really tough period. We've gone through some very hard transitions. We've lost a lot of population as a result of those hardships. And because we don't have enough households online, we just simply do not have the amount of tax revenue to take care of the things that we need. We have seen neighborhood associations, we've seen partners, we've seen churches really step up to the plate to try to hold things down as best as we can. But if we don't have strong government, then we'll continue to see the things that we see. We know one of the top issues that folks are always talking about, in addition to blight and crime, is the need to have things for our young people. The Boys and Girls Club is a tried and true institution that provides development, that provides access and exposure to education enrichment activities, to career exploration, to safe spaces where young people can come and be with their peers and also be in a safe environment where they can be guided. I am extremely honored to have a Boys and Girls Club in my district on Capitol Street that's doing amazing work. And so I know that they have some needs as it relates to their building. And so, I hope that we can see, and we've seen some attention from the state in supporting Boys and Girls Clubs of Mississippi across the state. And so I'm just hoping that we can get a little piece of the pie for Central Mississippi. As you mentioned, Anna, I do have a bill to eliminate some blight across the district. Very happy to work with my supervisor, Supervisor Deborah Dixon, who's a former member of the House, in trying to get some appropriations or bonds that help us in that vein. When we've talked with the City of Jackson Department of Planning, they've told us that, listen, we need millions and millions of dollars to tackle blight comprehensively. I mean, we have burnt out structures. Again, another relic, unfortunately, of the unhoused situation. We have out-of-state property owners that come in and buy these properties for cheap and never maintain them. And so we need some funds to be able to, get rid of those properties, to demolish them. And that way we can begin to open up those lots for some other kind of development. So we have several parks across the city, and the City of Jackson Department of Parks and Recreation do an amazing job at, really making sure that our parks are in good shape. Just recently, we announced a disc golf course at Livingston Park, right by the Jackson Zoo, another asset in District 68. But we want to, continue to accentuate our parks, make sure that the community centers are in appropriate shape for communities to have their functions, their events, their meetings, and also that our parks are, oftentimes parks are the living room to a community. And so we want the first room that people come into when they come into your house to look the best and provide the things that our families need throughout the district.
I'm glad you brought up burned structures, because you've also got a bill to create a fund for municipal and county fire departments across the state. Can you tell me how that came to be, and what needs you saw specifically to the fire department in Jackson?
Absolutely. So our firemen and firewomen sacrifice their lives each and every day, especially during these winter months when it gets really cold and people are looking for shelter. They're going out, they're fighting fires, they're trying to save lives and make sure that, other properties surrounding the property that's on fire don't get impacted. But unfortunately, the living quarters that they're in are subpar. And so what my bill would do is to provide a fund that municipalities can apply to. It would be administered by MEMA, and they could apply for funding from that fund to be able to do some upgrades, improvements, and renovations to their fire stations. Because, if our first responders are going to put their lives on the line, the least we can do is make sure that they are in comfortable quarters. I think this goes a long way in recruiting and retaining our first responders, and also just making sure that they are safe within the spaces that they work in, so that they can continue to keep the citizens safe. There is a bill on the calendar right now. It's for the Rural Fire Trucks Fund. And I've spoken with the chairman of that particular appropriations committee and the author of that bill. So we're going to continue to work together, because he's in the same mind of, yes, let's do something about our fire stations in addition to our fire trucks. So we'll keep working on that and see what we can shake out.
And speaking of spending that sometimes is done more political than needs-based, some of the fire funding, it has been, my observation, has been done in that manner. Is that something you think might be going on as well?
Disparities across the state. Disparities in funding.
For fire trucks
departments
and
across
fire
the state.
departments. It just would appear sometimes that is also a political spoils game sometimes.
Well, of course, our counties, our municipalities, as my good friend and colleague, Representative Scott says, our hamlets and villages, they all need these critical services. And so, I don't know that I would go as far as to say that it's political maneuvering. But I would like to see that the spending is equitable across the state. Because the more population that you have, of course, the more need that you're going to have. And so we should try to make sure, particularly with this effort of just recently opening up the CCID court and providing this new law enforcement agency in the city of Jackson with millions and millions of dollars so that they can provide services. Let's make sure that the other first responders in the city have what they need as well, so that everybody across the city is being taken care of.
Can we talk about casino for a minute?
Representative Summers brought it up first. So one thing you mentioned that's gotten a lot of attention, perhaps an inordinate amount at times, talk of a casino in the metro area. Where does that stand? I know there's a couple of bills, a lot of talk about it, but where is that right now?
It's been mum. I mean, it's been kind of quiet. The Capital Revitalization Committee, I believe their last hearing, they brought the developers in to talk about what the request was. Now, last year we had a bill that went through Ways and Means that would have, if passed, would have essentially allowed for a casino to come into the city of Jackson. But that bill went to the committee because it asked for money. This legislation, or at least the way that the developers framed it, was that they don't need money, that, the industry has enough money to do what it needs to do to bring a casino to the city. What they need is authority and permission to have another license to be able to move forward. Now, the bill that I am co-sponsoring with my colleague, Representative Bell, is in the gaming committee. And the chairman of that committee has been dealing with some at-home challenges, and so I'm not even sure if the committee is going to meet or where the bill stands. When I talked with the leadership, I left the conversation feeling like they were on board with it, but of course, we have some competing interests from other colleagues that have casinos in their areas, and they're very concerned about, if you bring one here, is that going to take, resources away from my town? And, I've even heard from particularly some business owners that have talked about how this could actually perpetuate more crime in the city of Jackson. I don't see it that way. The city of Jackson needs a shot in the arm. I mean, let's be clear. We have seen an effort from the state over a number of years to remove agencies from the city of Jackson and relocate them to surrounding areas, which takes away revenue, which takes away businesses being online and even access for folks to be able to get to those services. And so, we need a shot in the arm. And the way that the project was shared with us is that it's going to provide a lot of jobs. It's going to provide an opportunity to create more than just a casino, but an entertainment center. We met with Visit Jackson right before the session, and they showed us by way of the data that the two top reasons why people come to visit the city of Jackson, one is for culture, and the second is for entertainment. And so let's continue to give the people what they need, what they want. The city of Jackson is the only place in the state where 55 and 20 meet. So we have clear access points. And so I just think that this project is a win-win. I think it would provide more revenue to the city, and I've talked about that a lot throughout this podcast. And what I really liked about the bill was that it would create a fund that would generate at least $10 million year after year that could be used towards other economic development in the city of Jackson. So this is not money that we're coming to the state and asking for. This is a company or industry that's saying, look, we're willing to put our money where our mouth is. If you put us here, we will continue to contribute to the progress of the city of Jackson. And so, we'll see what happens. Former Governor Haley Barbour brought this to the delegation last year. And so I'm hoping that he can use his prowess to maneuver and get this across the finish line.
One thing we've seen in Mississippi in the past with casinos, getting a casino open or whatever is not it's not a cure-all. It doesn't bring in huge amounts of money overnight. When things work is when you get multiple casinos and it becomes, a resort area. Is that a potential for Jackson around the Pearl River or somewhere? Maybe not just one casino, but having another whole resort casino area of the state? Is that possible?
Yeah, I have no idea. The way that the project was presented to us was that it would be a resort on its own. It would have a hotel attached to it. It would have an entertainment center attached to it to bring like Cirque du Soleil to town, to bring other shows into town, in addition to it having a casino. So I don't know. Of course, the legislation would not allow that because it would be, just one license for this particular project. But I do think that might be some of the hesitation and some of the concern around passing this bill is that, are we opening the door for other casinos to come in? And then could that mean that some of the industry in other parts of the state would be affected by that? So, I understand the concerns. I really do. But I would just ask, and I have asked my colleagues to just consider, what could we do to try to make this happen, and also make sure that those other areas are made whole, and are not, adversely impacted by this. But I don't know. I really don't know.
Representative, we really appreciate you coming in and giving us this update. I know y'all are meeting. You probably need to go watch the floor, see if anything's going on this morning. But really appreciate you coming on. And if we could maybe extract a promise to come back soon and give us some more updates.
No question. You got it. And if I could just add before we wrap up, I like to listen to Morning Joe, and one of their commentators was at a World Economic Conference, I think it was, and he was speaking with one of the leaders there. I think the leader may have been from, I can't quite remember what country he was from, but he asked them, what do you think about the new administration? And he said, we have always liked the fact that America is the leader of the free world. We want America to be the leader of the free world. Our concern is with this administration is that they want to win. They want to be the winner. And when you put that into context and you think about winners, football games, basketball games, somebody's got to win, but that means somebody's got to lose. But when you talk about leadership, demonstrating leadership, being a leader, that means that you want everybody to win. You want everybody to come up. You want everybody to have access to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And so I would just leave the listeners with making sure that we're holding our leaders accountable to demonstrating true leadership, because we should want everybody to win and nobody should be left behind. But thank you all so much for being with you today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. That's a great way to end this.
Yeah, thank you for that.